Okay, this presentation is about my innovation project, which deals with advisory in the high school. Why did I choose this project? One was it's a new role for me next year. I'll be the grade level leader for grade 12. So this was a good opportunity to dig into what makes a good advisory, look at the current state, and really help me prepare for my job. Second is there's a bit of a drive to change it. Not only am I new, but the other three grade level leaders are new also. The dean of academics time has been released a bit, so he wants to focus more on this. So overall, it's a good time to drive through some innovative changes. So here's our current situation. This is our fifth year. We have a 30-minute advisory session. We either follow our advisory classes, either 2 years, going from 11 to 12, or 4 years, 9 to 12. Um, the grade level leaders are there's four of us. We each handle a grade level, and all of this is overseen by the dean of students. And the curriculum, if you want to call it that, is through our culture of care um, curriculum, which kind of aims to cover the whole school, is based off of a lot of the Castle research. If anybody's familiar with social and emotional learning, um, for next year, there is no dedicated planning time for both grade level leaders and teachers. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. We'll talk a little bit about the attitudes towards advisory a little bit later. So, what does the literature say? The School Redesign Network, which spent a lot of time looking at successful changes in school redesign, and a lot of this was massive redesigns of schools with an advisory kind of being part of that redesign process. And they came up with these five core elements, and they came up with these 10 optional elements as, elements of an advisory program. The yellow are the highlighted ones where I feel like at ISB we cover pretty well. The college and the career counseling stuff is actually handled by our career counselors, and there's four of them for the whole school. Um, so we don't do a lot of that stuff in advisory. The other point to make here is just because I've got five of these 15 doesn't make our advisory necessarily weak. What it does show is that every advisory is unique to the school based on their own unique needs. Like for example, it's unlikely that would be an area where we would connect to youth and family services. We just don't have those issues in international schools. Okay, what else does the literature say about successful advisories? Um, so first thing, the National Center for Restructuring Education, Schools and Teaching basically has identified advisory as one of the areas that is the most difficult to implement successfully. The research on this topic is pretty spotty at best, which is actually surprising given the amount of advisory programs that are out there. Some of the more successful advisories have come from full high school restructuring programs. So a lot of this are these larger schools of 1,000 to 1,500 students who basically break those schools down into kind of smaller schools of about 4 to 500, about 400 students each. And with that became a lot of massive restructuring of teaching practice, of teaching, of how students go through grades and everything else. So it was a really good opportunity to put advisory in kind of at the core of that. That's a lot harder to do at a school, at an international school that's kind of well established. But we do have similar sizes per se to what a lot of these schools are aiming for, at least at ISB we do. And kind of the final link where there was some reasonable amount of evidence was personalization and academic achievement had some association with advisory. Definitely personalization, like the process allowed teachers to get to know their students better and students get to know their teachers better. Academic links, generally there's an association with an advisory program with strong academic links, but the stronger the student, the less they like advisory. So it seems to help support weaker students and kind of middle of the road students, but our strong academic students, not so much. Which is interesting, especially in our context, because we are a pretty academically driven school, and a lot of the research we've collected over the last 4 years suggests this. Also linked to this was school climate, and that a more positive school climate was linked to an advisory program, um, which makes some sense when you think about it. You're making stronger connections between various stakeholders of the community. So there is some research out there, but again, the idea with advisories is it's so case school specific that it's hard to tease out a lot of things. Um, but there is some out there. So what does building a successful program look like? Really, it's looking at these five roles. Scheduling. So most successful advisories had a daily advisory, so they met for 15, 20 minutes. Um, they had scope and content of their curriculum, so it was a balancing between an open structure to where advisors had a lot of freedom to kind of adjust things to what they needed, and also some structure. New people new to advisory preferred that structure. The roles for the staff, particularly helping staff adjust to their roles as advisors. It's different than a teacher sometimes, and for some teachers, that role is different. So some training, some PD, some guidance for that. Um, Participants and groupings played an important aspect. So students like to be with people they knew. Um, Sometimes teachers and student personalities didn't quite fit, and these are hard, and you can't stop them completely. But a bit more thought into this could create a much more cohesive advisory group. And then support systems, administrative support that was listed as a big one, visible administrative support, and some PD to help figure out advisories. So those are the keys to a successful advisory. What does it look like here? So as part of this process, I interviewed all the leaving grade level leaders. A survey was sent to the students. We had about a 25% return rate. Given virtual school, that's great. Unfortunately, weren't able to really talk to the teachers. I was not going to put them through that at the busy end to an already crazy year, but I do hope to follow that up the next school year. Um, so, I mean, the positives that kind of came out of a lot of this was the optics, the fact that we have an advisory program. It's been there for a while. Nobody feels like it's going anywhere. But also, a lot of people felt that it was losing some of its focus. The other one was the teacher-student relationships. It's clear from our annual surveys and our data that students feel connected to their advisors and felt connected to their advisory. We've had about a 74% positive um, statement about that on surveys. The negatives, there are some significant ones here. Again, the focus. We kind of gone from a very um, kind of strict focus on the curriculum to a much more open, and I think some teachers are comfortable with that, some aren't. I think the students struggle with buy-in because of that, as do the teachers, because it kind of becomes what's the point. So I mean, for example, only about 28% of our students felt that advisory was being mentally helpful, so it helped them deal with some kind of social emotional aspect of that. And the fact that advisory plays a big role in that is worrying. Administrative support, so this came a lot from the grade level leaders, in the fact that they felt like they were, as one grade level he said, we're losing the culture war. The focus is on academics, not on this, and that how can we shift that if we don't have support from admin. And then the last one was, I guess, scheduling and planning time. This was both for the grade level leaders, and there's some concern next year with losing some planning time with the grade level leaders with their teachers in their grade levels, and what that's going to look like. So these kind of form the basis for possible changes to ISB structure. So with this, I developed kind of a number of strategies. I'm only going to be focusing on the short-term strategies for this presentation, simply because those are ones I felt I can at least do in my grade level. but I'm hoping that we can bring these out to the other three grade levels also. So short term by this I mean maybe within a year we can get these done, or at least get it on the track. Long term are more ideas that take a year or more to do, and they require a lot more collaboration between various stakeholders. And there are ideas that need to be developed, I think, in conjunction with the other grade level leaders and the dean of students and the larger community. But the short-term stuff I feel like I can do in my own advisory. So the first one is kind of what we call a journey track. So according to the research, um, we teachers preferred some structure, but also appreciated having an open structure. So the journey track here tries to address that. So for example, this is one here, and a lot of our advisory is divided into kind of different strands, different kind of focuses. So this is looking at the beginning of the year, which is we've kind of named starting right and goal setting. So I figure 6 sessions for this, and kind of 2 sections I've broken them into. So starting right option and a goal setting and planning. Um, so the idea here is there's a few things I feel like must be done. So those are the kind of the must-dos. And then I feel like there's other ones that are more open based on um, on the student's advisory and the teacher and what they're comfortable with. But I feel like the must-dos, and these are things that aren't that most, in my experience, most students have kind of been um, willing to engage in, and teachers. So the idea here is it'll be this series of activities, and ideally we click on those and it would come up with a description of the activity, maybe a little video, something like that. And then linked to that is the culture of care standards. So making sure that we're covering these different standards at different times throughout the year. And ideally from 9 to 12, if I can get the other grade level leaders on board with this, which I think I can. So this is kind of what it would look like. So this first one, just because it's the beginning of the year, I would put together most of these activities myself. Continuing on from there, I would like to make it a team effort with the grade level and the teachers involved in that. So somehow we would need to carve out some time for that. And my idea is, that the moment our planning time may be moved to some aspect of high school meetings. So that might be a good time to, at least divvy up the different work, see who would like to develop what activities or has some ideas, and then we can put those together. In time outside of that. That is not ideal. I would really wish to have some common planning time. The other option is we have PD days that this time may be available for. Um, and finally, we also have early release days once a month. So the kids leave about 2 hours early, and the hope would be to bring in some of that into here. Um, so the idea with those is I'm not I'm hoping not to add things to a plate. Um, I'm hoping to, I guess, provide a plate and provide that time within scheduled meeting times anyway to get this done. Um, and the idea is the first year it's a lot of work, and then if every grade level does this, we have a list of activities we can do, and future ones we can add to them, take away from them. But the idea here was it gives enough balance between those, and I believe the teachers will get on board once they realize that a little bit of work here brings a lot. So if you're planning one activity, what you're really getting from all that is 4 other activities, 5 other activities, because other people are contributing. So I'm giving ownership to the teachers, ownership to my group, and also building some collaboration and trust between those groups. Okay, the second strategy is, for lack of a better name, is what I call adopt an advisory. So the idea here is one of the few successful things students liked about advisory was meeting with other advisors in other grade levels. So quite commonly, the 11s and 12s would meet, and they would talk about something that the 12s had some knowledge in, course selection for grade 11s, what classes to take, that sort of thing. And those are really good places because the kids listen to each other probably more than they listen to teachers sometimes. So I want to expand on this idea. I want to build on this. And the idea is to have to build into these journey tracks regular meeting times, activities where they can meet with their other, advisory that they're going to adopt, hence the adopted advisory. So here are some of the activities that could be, grade 11's baking snacks for grade 12's during exam week, sharing CAST project ideas, um, and other ideas where, either you're helping build a community, you're breaking down the grade levels, so you're breaking down what, you know, grade 12s all hanging out with grade 12s. Now they might start to know some of the grade 11s a bit more. That's that can be an issue here at ISB. Um, and the idea is this could expand to 9 and 10s helping each other out, 8 and 9s. There's a lot of scope here to build this up. But I would definitely like to do this with grade 11 and grade 12. The advisors particularly like this because it's a chance for them to talk with other teachers and to compare this. And I think there's a lot of activities here we can build on, especially when we get more heads into the game and coming up with other ideas. So again, with teachers, I don't think this will be an issue. With grade levels, I don't think it'll be an issue. Um, it's just important to find groups that can work well together. So I think spending a little bit of time on that, and then coming up with some activities where they can help support each other. The last short-term strategy here is just communicating about advisory. I mean, we've had this program in for 5 years. Last year was the first time where on parent-teacher night, the parents actually met the advisors, and I think that's a significant oversight on our part. So, what I would like this to look like is the grade level leaders, should be communicating through blogs, through our weekly newsletters, through workshops about advisory, what it is, what it looks like. The advisory website would need to be updated, and ideally, I'd love to put all these journey tracks onto that, so that parents can see what their kids are doing. They can talk to them at home about it. Um, Beyond that, I would also like to add some workshops for parents run by the grade level leaders. So, mimicking some of the activities that we're doing in that workshop. And this could be in conjunction with the social and emotional counselors to help them kind of adjust to their teenagers and try to help explain what they would go through. Um, this is more to put on a grade level leader's plate. I certainly realize that. At least for the writing part of it, I think if each of us, there's four of us, if each of us agreed to write one post or one article a month, then we could keep an um, ongoing dialogue up with parents and getting what advisory is about out to the wider community. And the workshops for parents, I would be really excited about. I think that's a really good activity when designed correctly. Getting them to do what you do in advisory is a really strong way to show what you do. So again, here's some ideas: the weekly posts, maybe advisory workshops, kind of how this might look. Themes about community, things like that. So how will you measure success here? These things are hard to measure. There's not I can't measure necessarily academic success. There's nothing academic aspects of this. So this is going to be a lot of surveys, focus groups, iterations, improving on what previously exists, and looking at my success in these cases, kind of continuous improvement. So, students' appreciation of advisory increases, teachers' appreciation of advisory increases, you know, um, parents' understanding of advisory continually increases. And then also making sure that we're circling back and making corrections and looking at where the weaknesses are and looking at mechanisms to address those for the next iteration of the project. So um, again, these are the success criteria. Vague, I realize a little bit, but advisory in itself is a very nebulous thing, so it's hard to measure. But I think surveys, sitting down, talking with with teachers, talking with students, talking with parents would also be a very valuable way to collect feedback. And again, the idea here is just looking for continuous improvement. Um, so there's further questions too beyond kind of the long-term goals. As I got to the end of this project, I feel like I have some direction, but it's such a big concepts here, and the changes required are big that there's still some kind of unanswered questions that I'd still like to that I think we as a school need to discuss. And one is how do we group students and advisors? I mean, if you get into a group that you don't particularly like or have anybody in there you can talk to, that's 4 years of a particularly painful experience. So looking at ways we can group students better. Um, should grade level leaders follow their groups through the entire 4 years? My thought is yes. So you get to grade 12, you start over in grade 9. And also the other kind of big thing is what is the role of our grade level leaders and advisors in academic support? Do we run a more British style pastoral system, or kind of keep doing what we're doing now? Are there spots where the grade level leaders can get more involved in the decision making in students in their grade levels? Academic performance, should we be going to student concern meetings and things like that? So um, ultimately, what would success look like? This statement pretty much sums it up. Strong administrative support, we'd meet daily, a clear framework, and the purpose is understood and respected by all stakeholders. And we have advisors that are trained and fully prepared to help support their students. Okay, thank you.